are the knights, dedicated to Christ and his holy mother. We are the Knights of St. Michael.
Lucifer led a great revolt against God's heavenly kingdom before our world even existed. During that dreadful battle in heaven, St. Michael fought with Lucifer and the defiant angels and cast them into hell. St. John reports to us in the book of Revelation, "Woe to the earth and to the sea, because the devil has come down to you having great wrath, and knowing that he has but a short time." The Garden of Eden was his next scene of demonic warfare, and Adam and Eve became his first victims. That defeat was only the beginning of mankind's never-ending struggle against the spiritual world. For St. Paul tells us in his letter to the Ephesians, "We are not contending against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." So from the beginning of time itself, the history of God's people is a history written in spiritual conflict. Our church has been continually persecuted, and the blood of Christian martyrs has flowed through all centuries of our church's existence. Our 2,000-year-old church is our inheritance, our eternal gift from God. And we are the chosen caretakers who must defend it. Come with us now as we explore the mysterious history of God's great gift, the Catholic Church. The nights are on now. It's nighttime.
The kingdom of heaven is likened to a man who sowed good seeds in his field. But while his men were asleep, his enemy came and sowed cockleweeds among the wheat field and went on his way. When the blades of wheat sprung up and brought forth fruit, there also appeared many weeds. The servants of the good man of the house came to him and said, "Sir, did thou not sow good seed in thy field? Why then has it weeds?" And he said to them, "An enemy has done this." The servants answered, "Do you will that we go and gather them up?" He said, "No, lest perhaps gathering up the weeds, you shall root up the wheat together with it. Allow both to grow until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather up first the cockleweed and bind it into bundles to burn. But the wheat, gather into my barn. He that sows the good seed is the Son of Man, and the field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the cockleweeds are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the cockleweeds in the field are gathered up and burnt with fire, so shall it be in the end of the world. The Son of Man shall send his angels and gather out of his kingdom all scandals and all them that work iniquity. And the angels shall cast them into the furnace of fire, where there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then shall the just shine as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear.
Welcome to Warn World News. I'm Dan.
And I'm Mary. Our top story, War on God's Church.
Since the days of the Roman Colosseum, almost every country has a record of Catholic martyrs. In some cases, countries are marked by the suppression of the Catholic faith, while in others, the persecutions were so violent that very few Catholics survived the persecution.
In the 16th century, Germany was the main battleground of the Protestant Reformation, and the 30 Years' War was considered the worst disaster since the Black Plague. It was one of the saddest conflicts in European history, with destruction of entire regions resulting in famine and disease.
During that time, England was one of the most Catholic countries of Europe, but Catholicism was almost reduced to ashes when its king, Henry VIII, developed a passion for the sister of his mistress, no less. He decided he would marry the girl, but demanded the Pope annul the marriage to his first wife, Catherine of Aragon.
Unfortunately for Henry, marriage for a king or a pauper was the same. It was a sacrament which could not be dissolved. But even though the annulment was denied by Pope Clement VII, Henry mocked the church and married his mistress Anne Boleyn anyway. He then publicly declared himself the supreme head of a new Church of England.
Without delay, the brutal king ushered in an unprecedented reign of terror that lasted well beyond his lifetime. Every Catholic church, monastery, and convent were seized. The sacred vessels of gold were confiscated, ancient libraries were burned, priceless frescoes were painted over. Statues and sacred objects served as fuel for the fires.
Monks were tortured and executed, and many others who had the audacity to resist, like St. Thomas More, were beheaded, and their heads were placed on pikes. After almost 1,000 years, the Catholic faithful of England were violently forced to convert to the king's new religion.
Yet another example is that of Ireland. Irish people living the Catholic faith were persecuted mercilessly for more than 300 years, and thousands of people were put to death. After the Catholic Emancipation Act of 1829, the persecution simply took another form. Catholics were no longer slaughtered, but were offered bribes of food and money to abandon their religion.
The 18th century produced the French Revolution with a death warrant for Catholics. From its start in 1789, the French Revolution was the event that transformed social values and political systems in all of Europe, and eventually throughout the world.
This persecution began with a document issued by the French government, breaking ties with the Catholic Church and establishing a new national church system. The tragic pandemonium that resulted from this war is known as the Reign of Terror and was one of the most brutal and gruesome periods of all history.
Rewards were given to whoever would denounce a Catholic priest. When the priests or monks were caught, they were executed within 24 hours, unless they were willing to take the national oath and deny their faith.
Through the Middle Ages and Enlightenment period, secret societies in Europe spearheaded countless deceptive schemes to undermine papal authority and destroy the Catholic foundations upon which Europe was built. Anti-Catholic propaganda was circulated, attacking the character of priests and nuns, as well as slandering Catholic teachings. In later years, communism continued this devastation, attempting to destroy the church in various nations.
And so, the same story continues on and on throughout church history. Catholics have been attacked, tortured, and almost snuffed out all over the world. England, France, Germany, Ireland, Poland, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Lebanon, Russia, Mexico, Africa, Israel, Sudan, Brazil, Philippines, China, Cuba, Scotland, South America, Guatemala, Belize, Hungary, Czechoslovakia.
But we ask you, who is behind all this? Who are these destroyers? Who has plotted against God from the beginning of time to set up the master plan to destroy the Church of God? Indeed, it is Satan, and there is not one country on earth that has escaped his destructive touch.
From ancient Roman emperors to modern communist dictators, the war on the Catholic Church has continued from age to age. The soldiers change from generation to generation, but their leader is always the same.
Despite these various persecutions, we were promised by Jesus himself that his church has been built upon the rock of St. Peter, and that the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. In the end, he will triumph. Until then, we must remain faithful to his will and continue to fight to defend God and his holy church.
The greatest battles are yet to be fought, and you, fellow knights, are the soldiers. I'm Mary, signing off for WARN World News.
And I'm Dan. You have been warned.
Don't you believe that all religions are equal?
Who are you to say you have all the answers?
Does it really matter what religion a man believes in? Come on.
It's the way you live from day to day that really matters.
Miss Liz, you were recently reported as saying that the Catholic Church is the one true church. Certainly you're not so narrow-minded that you believe that Catholicism is truer than other religions. What about the multitude of educated people who believe otherwise?
Do you realize that as of today, there are over 33,000 different denominations of Christian religions? Now, out of these 33,000 different denominations, you tell me, which do you believe is the true church?
No matter what denomination you are.
What difference does it make?
And why is this even important? We all basically believe the same thing.
Not exactly. Otherwise, why would denominations split over and over? Catholics have the Eucharist, confession, sacraments, the Pope, the unbroken line of bishops, and the Blessed Mother. By my estimation, that is different than any other Christian groups. But let me ask you this. If you discovered that there was a church founded by Jesus, would you then believe that was the one true church?
Look here, little lady. Everyone here is Christian. That automatically means that we are followers of Christ. But you tell us why you think the Catholic Church qualifies as the one true church.
Well, let's begin with a little history lesson. The Catholic Church was founded in the year 33 AD by Jesus Christ. It's been growing strong for almost 2,000 continuous years. But it should be well noted, no Protestant church existed until the 16th century. At that point, the Catholic Church was already 1,500 years old. If you look at any reliable history book, you will find that the Catholic Church was the first Christian church.
No, I believe you're wrong. That's not true. St. Peter founded your church just like Martin Luther founded mine. And it was Jesus Christ who started each church.
No. Jesus gave Peter his authority when he said, "And I say to thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." St. Peter then became the first pope and head of the Catholic Church that Jesus founded. I'm quite positive Jesus never told that to Martin Luther. But you were right about one thing. Your church was founded by Martin Luther. 1,500 years later, the Protestant revolt began in Wittenberg, Germany. On that infamous day, the soon-to-be ex-priest nailed 95 protests to the doors of the Catholic Church. The so-called Reformation grew out of this one act and has grown into thousands of different denominations who nonetheless disagree with one another over key doctrines. Now, contrast this with the unbroken line of the Catholic Church, which stretches through 2,000 years and has preserved the original faith of Christ through a succession of over 260 popes, from St. Peter to our Pope today.
Well, it may be true that the Catholic Church was the first, but certainly you have not proven that it is the one true church.
Sir, do you believe that Christ would come to earth, establish a church, then suffer for it and be crucified only to pause everything and leave his church for 1,500 years without a leader or guidelines or moral law? Think about it. For all that time, the church was growing. Great cathedrals and monasteries were built. Apostles were preaching through the streets. Masses were said. Books were written. Dogmas were debated over. Countless martyrs gave their lives for their faith long before the Reformation.
Maybe so, but certainly not everyone was happy about it. Many protested the wealth and the power of the Pope. He even had his own army.
You bet he did. They were defending your Christian ancestors. Where were your ancestors in 1571 when the Holy Father and the Catholic Army, the Holy League, saved Europe from Muslim invaders? The Battle of Lepanto was the major victory that turned the tide against the Turkish fleet, the most feared navy in the world. That famous victory prevented the Islamic takeover of Europe and saved Christianity so that we may stand here debating it today. If you could remove the Catholic Church from world history, Christianity would not exist on the face of the earth. Who was it that hand-copied each page of this Bible before the printing press was invented? Without God's blessing, the Christian faith would have died in the Colosseum. Neither the Christian faith nor the Bible would exist today without the ones who defended and preserved it.
Miss Liz, tell me, how can you believe in Catholicism when there have been so many scandals in your own church?
As sad as it is that scandals may happen, our faith is not in man. Our faith is in God and in Christ, who gave us our church. Even though men can become corrupt, that doesn't change the power of the sacraments or the prayers. It doesn't affect the Holy Eucharist. Think back to the first 12 apostles. Judas, one of the 12 handpicked by Jesus, and Judas betrayed Christ by handing him over to be crucified. It's a good thing the other apostles didn't walk away from Christ when Judas committed the ultimate scandal. We can't lose our faith in God, even though we may lose our faith in men. It's time for common sense. I ask you, which is the true church founded by Jesus Christ? History, logic, and common sense tell us it's the Catholic Church. So should we believe in the divine authority of Jesus Christ, or the human authority of mortal men who have supposedly reformed his church? Instead of listening to the media propaganda, let the history unravel the truth. I'm Miss Liz, and that's Common Sense.
The gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Mr. Positive!
Minnie, what's wrong?
Mr. Positive!
I'm right here. Calm yourself. As a rule, we prefer to avoid such visible displays of emotion. We are to remain calm and collected at all times.
I'm sorry, Mr. Positive, but I'm doing my daily reading of the Bible. We read the Bible, so you don't have to. I came across this. And I say unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Is it possible that you forgot to mention this to me?
Right. Matthew 16, verse 18.
The gates of hell shall not prevail against his church?
That passage describes the moment he established Peter as the chief shepherd of his church. And the papacy comes from this grant of authority through a continuous line of successors.
I know my history. It is an unbroken line from St. Peter to his immediate successor in Rome, down to the Pope today. But I did not know that we will never prevail.
Minnie, you must get a grip on yourself.
We are doomed. We were failures before we even started. The end is in sight for all of us.
That's enough. What have I been training you for? For victory, for domination, for souls. We exist in this realm to incite confusion and spread our hatred for Him. From the beginning, from the very beginning, I vowed to sow new religions, new heresies, set up new laws contrary to those of the Most High. I raised up false leaders who spread these doctrines and scattered seed through them. I afflicted the poor and sowed discord, and excited wars and stirred up nations against one another. But we are not done yet. We will continue to lead souls away from heaven, and we will torture and torment them for all eternity. In this way, we spite Him and all His plans.
But it's a losing battle. It says so right there. Our first battle against Michael, we lost and ended up here. We continue to fight, but for what purpose? Why fight if we can't win?
We continue to fight for one reason: to populate our realm and to keep others from enjoying what we will never know again: God. We persecute, we destroy, we tempt, we hate, all for the sake of denying human souls what was rightfully ours. We continue to fight for you, for your soul. We want you here. So we will fill the world with confusion and lies, attacking with all our might the very source of your strength.
The Catholic Church!
Exactly. God became a man to show men the path to heaven. We dim that path, create other paths, and make the straight and narrow seem crooked and wide.
So, you've always known that we couldn't win, but we will drag down as many of them as inhumanly possible.
Nothing hurts Him more than losing human souls. He loves them. He loves them so much. So our number one mission is to drag those humans to hell. We don't fight to win, Minnie. We fight to oppose Him.
So the gates of hell may not prevail, but we can do some pretty dirty work in the meantime.
You have no idea, Minnie Positive. You have no idea.
America saw thousands of frightened and starving Catholic immigrants fleeing from Europe and seeking safety and religious asylum. However, bigotry had come to America before they arrived. Laws discriminating against Catholics had already been passed in many of the states and almost destroyed the religious liberty they had come so far to find. Anti-Catholic groups, like the American Protective Association, distributed anti-Catholic literature and opposed the election of Catholics to public offices. Sometimes there was even rioting and destruction of church property. A great new wave of Irish immigration brought even more religious hatred, and bigoted signs were placed throughout the cities, "Down with the Catholics." This was the state of anti-Catholic prejudice in America in the early 1900s. The Church has suffered from the days of Nero to the days of Stalin and Hitler. Catholics have faced imprisonment, crucifixion, the guillotine, hanging and firing squads around the world. The Church's property has been plundered from Roman times to the present. Countless Catholics have stood helpless as the Church was persecuted. Today, we again see the ugly head of discrimination in countless forms. But we shouldn't be surprised, for there has never been a day in almost 2,000 years that the Catholic Church has not been under assault. And yet, to the present time, she has not surrendered one single letter of divinely revealed truth, which Christ commanded her to proclaim to the world until the end of time. Christ himself made it perfectly clear that we would be persecuted for our belief in him, and that each and every one of us must follow him to the cross. This is our faith. This is the faith of the fathers, and this is the faith of the martyrs, the same unchanging faith that we too must defend.
And the blood of Christian martyrs.
No, it's the way you live from day to day that really matters.
Miss Liz, you were recently reported as saying that
It's time for common sense. Sorry, it's just hard to read with the glare.
And upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it.